What's up, amigos? Commander Heimer here today, and we're covering Genesis today. So Vision had their online tournaments this weekend. They had both standard and premium, and today we're covering a third place premium deck profile, specifically Valkerion. And so let's start getting into it. So I actually had the pleasure to actually chat with the player, AFKHobby. Him and I actually got a chance to have an interview article. So if you want to check that out more in depth to see more of his mindset and how he responded to some of the questions that I had about his deck, feel free to check down the link down in the description at Access Vanguard. We actually have another profile on there, so feel free to check it out. And so there's many deck study guides there, but also interview articles are going to be featured on there that are outside of Grand Blue, outside of Aqua Force, so be on the lookout for that. So what's really cool, when I was talking to AFKHobby about his deck profile, like why Valkerion and not something like Fenrir, where we've been seeing some results with Fenrir on the online environments and even some of the Japanese lists too. And one of the things that he really wanted to represent Astro Poets. That's really it, and do his best to really use the cards from the new set to help this deck actually compete for premium and get something in top weight. And he actually got very far, so kudos to you, amigo. And so as you can see, there's plenty of grade 3s and of course the Astro Deity over here. So there's a lot of those high grade counts, and the ratios are a little different, and I'll talk about a little bit of what that looks like and how they're mitigated with their skills too. And so for those that don't know, like, what does this deck even do? Right? So this deck takes advantage of this grade 5 Valkerion right here, and what he does is just a 70k base unit that has the possibility of dry checking depending on what you mill from its go, and usually it's a grade 3, especially since we play a huge amount of grade 3s, a triple drive. And with that big beater attacking, we can use a card like Marduk, the stride up here, to go into stride during the battle phase, have GB1 active, and then we can take advantage of cards like Taro, the stand trigger, to actually be able to be soul blasted and restand the Valkerion, because it's actually a regard. So a restanding 70k beater with the Force 2 marker on it is very threatening. And of course you have more Force 2 markers on your front row, especially your Vanguard. And over here with cards like Origin Deity Uranus, his skill is an act where he could just put the astral plane, so that way Valkerion can actually live. He can only live in the astral plane, so that's very key. So when you attack with the Vanguard, you could actually just stride into Marduk that way during the battle phase, so you have that GB1. So the deck just restands Valk. We have other cards that Soul Blast Taro, such as Gleipnir over here. Very phenomenal card used in Fenrir, but it also can be used in here to trigger the restand on Valk when you Soul Blast a Taro. And then of course, if you drive check stance, which this deck actually plays 12 stance, as you can see, it just restands itself. So you can actually take advantage of those drive checks and also soul blasting Taro, so you can actually have multiple chances of restanding the Valkerion and really be threatening and go for that OTK kill in that single turn with just hitting very high pressure numbers, high crit and everything. So I got a chance to talk about what does his ratios look like, and at first the first thing that stood out to me, there's a lot of grade 3s and of course the Valkerions. And what I found out is that the more Astro Poets that you have, the more Astro Deities you have, the better. Because a lot of these cards use those cards to get force markers. The new Pegasus looking dragon, Ionissus, actually has a pseudo PG effect. So even though you can see there's no PG draws in the trigger lineup, there's no grade 1 PGs, this acts like a pseudo PG by discarding an Astro Poet or an Astro Deity. So it really fixes that problem to make room for the grade 1s, so that way you can have cards like Daiku, where you can actually place on Vanguard Circle or Regard Circle, discard a card and check the top 7, and you can add up to 2 Astro Poets or Astro Deity, and if you do, you can generate a force marker, and it's for free. There's no counterblast behind it, which this deck can be counterblast denied, and so that's why he has cards like over here, the grade 1 Amari, where you can soul blast 2 and countercharge. It's an act as a regard, so it's there to help with that too. In premium, there's just some damage denial going on, and so that helps mitigate that as well. Not only that, even in the interview, I mentioned, why are you playing 4 Vanagander, the stride, in the G zone? Is that part of your winning strategy? Is that part of your winning image? And he said it's really for that counter damage denial. So if you are going back and forth damage denying each other, you might as well go into a stride like Vanagander that actually lets you do something, and that's what that card is there for. And I agree with him, just having a fallback card, because ultimately this deck just relies going into Marduk once or twice. You could always fall back into Amaruta over here and then really just take advantage of Valkerion. So the main winning image isn't solely strict to the actual G unit that you stride with. It's just the fact you're enabling GB1 so Valkerion can restand multiple times and also have Taro be Soul Blasted. So there's plenty of room in the G zone, like I said, just to fit like cards like that for counterplays or certain hard matchups. I know one of the hardest matchups for this is like decks that have this pseudo denial Griffin plays. He mentioned Tricky Assistant from Pale Moon. That's something to be aware of, where your Valkyrian just gets popped during your own battle phase. That's really not good, and it just really hurts the deck as a whole. So things like that are just to keep in mind as you play this deck. And so a lot of the other units, especially the Backrux, the grade 1, is really useful because it's a grade 1. When you ride on it, you get to immediately search for the grade 2, the Arctois, I think that's how you pronounce it, and it immediately grabs it from deck. So it's almost like a ride chain effect, and he even says it's like a ride chain. So that way you don't really brick, and that's a concern because you're only playing 8 grade 2s, as you can see, 4 Gleipnir and 4 of this unit, and then the rest are grade 1s and the rest are grade 3s with the Astro Deity over here. So that helps with that ride chain, making sure you ride up to your grades. And then of course these units have pseudo effects, like this one counts as a grade 4 in the soul basically, and so with that you can have easily Origin Deity to use its effect where you Soul Blast up to equivalent of grade 5 to create that Astral Plane. And so you have this card and then you Soul Blast another card, you're already there at that point. So it helps with that. And then of course you can discard some of these Astral Poets with the PG-like effect with the Ionessus Dragon. And also it's really just taking advantage of the stand triggers, and you have Dreaming Dragon just in case you need to shuffle back your drop zone back into your deck if you keep grinding that game. So one of the cool things with Dreaming Dragon, and even in the past with the original Fenrir loop back in G-Era, it allowed the deck to not deck out. Yes, you're soul charging and you're drive checking and all that kind of stuff, but if you were close to deck out, you would lose the game. But cards like Dreaming Dragon kept you in the game. Not only that, it drew you new cards, so you have a better quality of hand at that point potentially. And it was a good way to also get more triggers into the drop zone, put them back into the deck. So now your deck's starting to become more like trigger heavy, and it becomes more threatening on your drive checks and of course your damage checks for if you got heals and everything like that. And just to wrap things up, one of the things that like the takeaways that I asked AFKHobby, like what would you change from the deck, or he even mentioned it on his own, is that something that I would change is probably the grade 1 Amaris over here to probably Bobos, the Cray Elemental. That way you can give yourself Counterblast, you can give yourself an extra damage, you can give yourself Soul 2. It just really helps with that. He realized that you really need 1 to 2 CB to really pop off. Bobo just gives you that 2 CB to work with, and so he was considering that maybe he just drops Amari and actually try that out. I think that might be a good play, definitely worth trying out. Ultimately, you're riding, you want to ride the grade 1 Backrux anyway, and then there's also Daiku. So if you can ride one of these, then you're in the promised land. And then if you replace these with like Bobos, then you can really like handle that damage denying game that you have to deal with, and you can guarantee that basically that you're gonna go into Valkerion and do your play and go for the OTK turn for your victory at that point. Not only that, you also can fall back into Ultima if you really need to. And some of the, I don't think he ever really gets to the GB8 at that point, but if you grind, I guess, for a long time, that's something just to have, just in case. There's always Amaruta that you can fall back into. I'm not sure if the Progenitor Dragon comes up often, but it can. And then you got your G-Guards to help you Soul Charge, Protect with Dismal. You got Laura as well to return some cards with some big shield. And you got Ear over here that can Soul Charge up to 4 cards, which is really useful depending on what you need to Soul Charge, especially like Taros and some of the key components. Like the grade 2, just to add up with the Astral Plane for Uranus over here as well. Thanks again to Vision for actually putting the time and effort to host these tournaments. It's good to see some competitive scenes behind Vanguard, especially with this whole pandemic going on. We're still in December 2020. Thanks guys for your effort. It really helps a lot with the community too. As Bushiroad releases the new sets, we're all wanting to try out the new stuff, and especially it's like our favorite clans, and somebody had really their own passion with Astro Poets, and really we're seeing it here and we can actually recognize them. And again, thanks for AFKHobby for actually taking the opportunity just to actually do this interview and also show his deck here in this video. If you want to see the interview article, again, it's in the link down in the description below. Check that out, Axis Vanguard. With that, amigos, if you like the video, give it a like, comment down below, share with a friend, and also subscribe. See ya, amigos. Bye!